This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Today's Suit Up Sports is brought to you by Neogenics, Charlotte's #1 when it comes to stem cells and regenerative therapy. I'm not saying that because that's what I'm supposed to say. I'm saying that because I've lived it. So is Frank. Nico over at Neogenics is taking care of us. I've had stem cells in my arm. I've had it in my knee. I've had it in my shoulder. You've had it in your back.
Buddy, you ain't lying when you're talking about Neogenics as a life support for us as older guys. Weekend warriors.
Yep.
If you're looking to, kind of replenish your body and get that 30-something filled back, Neogenics is the place for you. I know a lot of Panther players use it. I used it, got my lower back done.
Yep.
And the best thing about them, buddy, is that they will tell you exactly what it is that you need to do. And they might not be able to help you.
And if they can't treat you, they won't treat you.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's any nagging joint pain, shoulder, neck, back, knees, any of those things, they'll treat it. They do stem cells. They do PRP. And like Frank said, they do a lot of athletes from Thomas Davis to Harold Varner Jr. to Matt Doherty. And I can go to Tony Womack, baseball all-star. It works, and they're honest. Like Frank said, some of their competition they'll treat you just to take the money, whether they know it's going to work or not work. These guys are only going to work with you if they know they can help you. 704-727-6551. That's 704-727-6551 or neogenicstemcells.com. You see it on the bottom scroll of our show, neogenicstemcells.com. Tell them DJ and Frank sent you.
Check them out, bud.
Thank you. Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout along with Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. It's great being back and back in the saddle again. I've been out for a couple of days and Yarb's filled in. You got Buck on here. You got all the A-flight guests we have.
Well, Buck, I don't know if you got to see it, but we were talking to Buck about Xavier Legette's fight. And Buck was at the game, and he went to a practice last week, so he's kind of been around the team. And so breaking down the Panthers and what he thought about the team was pretty cool. But I asked him about the fight that Legette got in, and what were some of the best fights that he had seen when he was in the NFL. And of course, the first one he brings up was you against his good buddy Chester McLaughlin, which I've forgotten that they had played together at Clemson.
That's right.
And to hear him say how Chester McLaughlin was like this soft-spoken dude and like took a lot to get him mad, and that, of course, the one guy that could get him that mad would be Frank Garcia.
Well, it's a funny story because Russell Maryland was really the guy that I went after as he hit Fred Lane out of bounds. And as an offensive lineman, you chase the play. You just kind of ingrained it in your body to go out there and follow the ball so that if a ball comes out or you can pick your help your teammates up. It's our job as the enforcers and the protectors to do that. So Russell Maryland hit Fred Lane out of bounds right on the sideline. I went and lambasted Russell Maryland, and here comes Big Chester, and all hell broke loose on the sideline. Kerry Collins was in there, Rocket Ismail was in there, Wesley Walls was in there, Blake Brock, and
what the heck was Rocket Ismail doing there? He was break a fingernail in there.
He was bouncing around. Stop, like a little, like you're 100% right.
Yeah.
But you kind of find out who's got your back in a dark alley when those things go down. And the funny thing is my quarterback was right there throwing haymakers, and so was my left tackle. So
Kerry was a big dude. People don't realize he was a big dude.
Kerry was 6'5", 6'6", 245, 250 pounds.
Yeah.
He was like Ben Roethlisberger out there, and had the biggest Mexican in captivity of Norberto Davids Garrido on my side, and we had Blake Brockemeyer, and we held our own. And that's where you kind of we kind of introduced ourselves to each other.
I think I told the story, but first of all, now I forgot about Norberto, what's his name?
Norberto Davids Garrido.
That. Maybe the paper, when they said to me Mexican, was referring to him. Maybe I went after the wrong guy. I don't know.
No. He was in the paper. They had my caption was right there, and we were throwing side by side. And,
I told the story that's how I hired Frank. I was producing Primetime with the Pac-Man back then. This was what, 97?
97.
Yeah. And we were tired of the same old athletes coming in saying the same old thing, good Lord willing, and whatever, blah blah blah. And
I just want to thank my mom.
I want to thank my mom. Like Nuke LaRouche and Bull Durham. And I was at that game. I see this fight, and I'm like, who is that 65? Like, good Lord. And the next day, front page of the paper, sports page, was the mean Mexican. And I was like, that's our guy. Pack was like, go get him.
Yeah.
So I tracked you down, and then the rest was history.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, after that whole fight, because Chester kept going.
He chased you in the locker room after the game,
No,
didn't he?
he tried to banter me to come outside and meet him. Like, nah, I've had mine. What happens on a football field stays on a football field. It's not personal, bud. But he's coming after me again, and he comes back after that, and he gets ejected. I don't even get a penalty called on me.
Oh, really?
No, I thought
you got thrown out too.
I didn't get a penalty. I got fined. For the fight, but nothing happened as far as the game goes. He got 2 personal fouls unsportsmanlike conduct called against him, and he got ejected from the game. And as he was leaving, I blew him a kiss.
Oh, Lord.
Right. And he wants to come back more. And here comes the more flags as he's pushing the referees, trying to get some more of me. Right. And he got another 15 yards. The game was already won. It was, fourth quarter. The Raiders back then, all they wanted to do was fight because they couldn't beat anybody. They had so much talent. But after the game, he called me and wanted me to go out there and meet him in the parking lot. I said, no, thanks. But about 2 months later, he used to have this golf tournament down in Myrtle Beach. So after things have probably cooled down, tempers have cooled off, I get this letter into my locker from Chester. And I'm like, okay, he's going to want to, come after my family or something like that. And he stopped everything and invited me to go play in his golf tournament. And I'm thinking to myself, okay,
you getting set up?
Am I getting set up? Is he going to have all his boys over there waiting for me? There's no way in hell I'm going out there. But after we had a couple of communications, I said, I'd love to play in your tournament. Everything was cool. We let bygones be bygones. And he was a great guy. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. He passed away.
Did you play in the golf tournament?
I did play in the golf tournament. It was in Myrtle Beach. It was a great tournament. Guys like Bruce Smith. I think this was might have been the time that Bruce Smith fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh, Lord.
As he was, down there having some cocktails and some things of that nature. But
Myrtle Beach is known for that.
It was a great time, but he was a great dude. And that's college football's here. High school football's right around the corner.
So before we dive into the college stuff, because we haven't really talked college football yet this year, and now we're really a little over a week out from the first games, and then August 23rd is the first big weekend. We'll get into that. But high school football, everyone's been practicing. If you drive by your local high schools, you see the kids out there this week in the rain. The week before that, sweating in the 98-degree weather, and you're coaching at Charlotte Catholic. You guys have a scrimmage tonight, correct?
Yeah, so much different. We play Raven Gap tonight. It's a team out of Georgia, and they're really, really loaded. So it's going to be a good test for us to kind of see who we have at what positions, and we can kind of get guys in the right position, maybe manipulate, move some pieces around a little bit to, where we're strong, where we're weak, and what we need to do. When you play a good team like that, it kind of affords you the ability to do that. And thankfully, it doesn't cost us any wins or losses. And hopefully, no injuries take place. That's the thing you hope for in these scrimmages, that everybody comes out healthy. But, it's been so crazy, DJ, these last couple of weeks. And we play over at Charlotte Catholic, which is a little school, little grass field. We still have one of those teams that have, stay with grass. But the problem is when it rains, you can't practice on it. So you have to go find other places. Well, now that with what all the technology they have and all the safety precautions and measurements, they have this wet bulb test that if it's like between 88 and 90, right, whatever the reading comes up on this wet bulb, and it factors in humidity, it factors in the heat, it factors in a lot of things. You have to take shoulder pads off, and you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, and then once it gets over 92 or 91, you can't practice.
Oh, so my God.
That's the problem, is trying to find times to practice now to get these kids ready.
So you just have to call it off, or y'all just move to the gym and
we try to go to the gym. We try to figure out something else, try to get some walkthroughs, but for high school in particular, these kids are still learning how to play the game, and they're learning how to, hit people. They're learning how to get hit. They're learning how to tackle. They're learning how to block. So for them, the fundamentals are really important. And these are the times that you instill those fundamentals into those kids. So, it's really tough if you don't have an indoor facility, which is the reason why in Texas, I think a lot of those schools go to that, because they'd never be able to practice. Yeah. So that's been the challenge for us in high school. But we play a great team tonight in Raven Gap, and we've got to travel 2 hours, about 4.5 hours away. They're just outside of Atlanta, and they're meeting us halfway, kind of near just outside of Greenville, right there in that area. So it'll be a good little test. But yeah, football's here, man, and I'm excited about it. I wake up every morning at 6:30. We have practice at 7, trying to beat the heat.
Yep.
And we just go from there. But it's for college. We're going to talk a lot about that. These coaches are getting ready. It's interesting to figure out how this dynamic with the NIL is taking place. You get the you have the Panthers preseason. You got all the preseason games in the NFL taking place. We're about a week away, 2 weeks away, and we're right in the heart of it.
We're getting there. And, Frank and I, we were talking about this earlier as big college football fans. We're not the ESPN analysts where we're studying everything every day and knowing every single thing about every single team and every single transfer and NIL money and all these things. We know enough to be dangerous. And then as the season goes, obviously we follow like everybody else does. And starting to go through this over the past couple of weeks, it really is insane. I feel like doing research for college football right now is almost like when you're kids right now are starting school back. My stepson started his senior year of high school this week, and I know in a couple weeks Charlotte Mecklenburg start, and they get their new classes. And I feel like studying college football right now is like, okay, I took Algebra 1 last year, now I'm taking Algebra 2 because it's a whole new ball game as to who's the quarterback.
Fundamentals applied,
who's the players on each team, who's the quarterback on each team, and every single team for the most part is affected, even all the way down to teams like UNC Charlotte and App State who play in a couple weeks. All the transfer guys that they've brought in and new coaches as well. But college football doesn't waste any time getting off to a good start. Some of these early games, week one, that's one thing that I like about college football right now that's different than the old days. In the old days, the good teams would start off with a couple sallies and they would beat them.
You'd play your San Jose State, you'd play your Carolina, your App State. Back then when they weren't very good, you play your East Carolinas. And there's nothing against those programs. I'm not trying to diminish them, but if you're a Clemson, if you're a Carolina, if you're NC State, you should be beating those teams handily and getting some good reps so that when you get into the meat of the season, you're ready to go and you can operate, at a higher level. Yep.
And, Ohio State, Texas, which are two of the teams we're going to talk about, they play August 30th. And there's some big games before that. But I want to start with that because everybody, when you read anything about college football, when you watch anything about college football, Arch Manning's name is probably the name that we hear more than any name in college football right now. The big NIL money, obviously the lineage of his family and, with what Peyton and Eli and even his brother or his father, and then obviously his father. He's going to be the main guy this year. They've already come out and basically said that he's not going to go pro next year. So he looks like he's going to be at Texas for a couple of years. And when you're making, I think, $6 to $8 million in NIL, and your family's already worth about $100 million or more than that, I guess you have the luxury to do that. But these two teams kick it off on August 30th, man, and what a huge game to start off the season.
Yeah, I mean that name itself alone is more about the legacy than anything else. I'm figuring is that when he comes in and he's learned and he's failed and he's lost and he's learned how to play the position a little bit better. Then when he gets to the NFL, he'll be able to hit the ground running as a first round pick, the number 1 overall guy, which we're all assuming he's going to be when he decides to come out.
Yep.
That he'll be able to help an organization win. Right away. And it'll be interesting to see when that time comes. We're talking, 2 years down the road, pretty much. They have to play this season. Hopefully he stays healthy next season. Hopefully he'll stay healthy and continue to grow. I want to see another great quarterback like that come out, and I want to see him help bring another organization maybe from mediocrity to being a powerhouse for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And just kind of like what Peyton did with Indianapolis, the Colts, he put them on the map. Then he went and won one with Denver. So you like to see these quarterbacks come in and make the NFL more competitive, because that's what's going to happen if he continues to grow and get better, because of the the pedigree that he has in his side on his team.
Yep, and that game's in Ohio State, and Ohio State is still have not announced who their quarterback's going to be. So coming off a national championship,
is it a day game or a night game?
Let's see. I'm not sure if they've been announced that
yet. Because I played at Ohio State. I played at both states.
It's at noon.
Oh gosh, so it's gonna be a burner. It's gonna be hot.
Yep.
Right, and coming from Texas. It's not going to be too hot. It's probably a lot hotter in Texas than it will be in Ohio, but it's still going to be one of those games where you're going to have to be in shape and condition because injuries with fatigue, that's where the injuries started happening, that because of the heat and the exhaustion. So, first game of the season, I remember feeling like I was in the best shape of my life. We went through practice, we went through training camp, we were doing our wind sprints, so all the things that you did in order to get ready. But once you get going, the pressure, the anxiety, all the things that it's inside of you, you get tired faster than anything.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
your adrenaline.
Your adrenaline is running. It's like you have to learn over time how to experience that without overexerting yourself and sprinting in a mile race. You imagine going. I mean, these guys can do it almost for 4 laps now, but you and I going out and we're training for a mile. You pace yourself.
Yep.
You got to pace yourself. If you went out and sprinted for the first lap, you'd be dead. You couldn't move in that second or third lap. You'd be done. So that's kind of what happens to a lot of these teams early on, especially with all the hype surrounding this game.
Oh yeah.
It'll be the team that's more experienced, that has the veteran players that have gone through those big games in preseason, that are prepared. And I think that's where the other thing that we need to discuss with a lot of these games is that whose coaching staff is going to prepare their team the best, because that's going to factor into these games early on.
Well, you would think that Ohio State, obviously winning a national championship, going through the playoffs last year, Ryan Day's been there, been very successful. You would think that the experience that they have just from that would help on game one. But then the flip side of that is they're having to replace so many players due to the NFL.
So it's not the same team.
Due to the portal. So it's not the same team. So, there's going to be a lot of new blood in there, or even guys that were on that team last year that were redshirt freshmen or that didn't play as much, who are now going to have to play a big role. Right. It's going to be a big difference. In Texas, obviously, same thing. They were in the playoffs. Sarkisian's obviously a very good coach. They've got more talent than probably anybody, or maybe other than Ohio State. But again, going to Ohio State, you're right, with the adrenaline that's going to be running through them, all the media, the press, ESPN's going to have game day there. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, for some teams, some schools, they rebuild. They go through what you talked about. They leave their seniors, and other teams just reload. Ohio State's one of those teams that reload, and they're going to be a team that has first-round draft choices coming in all over the place.
Yep.
They got 5-star recruits everywhere. Same thing with Texas. Over the last 4 or 5 years, especially with the NIL, they got more money than anybody else, and you see that, as we just talked about with Manning. So Arch Manning. So you know that these teams are going to have the horses that are necessary in order to win a national championship. But one team is coming off of a disappointing loss in an offseason of we could have, should have, would have done these things, right? I know Texas lost some guys too. It's going to be a little bit different team there, but the meat of that team is still there. And they're going to have that in their crawl the entire offseason. Hey, we got to grind. We got to work harder. We got to take that next step. We're coming off of a loss. We're coming off of a defeat, and we got to push harder. We got to work harder this offseason. Those extra reps, I have to run faster. I have to run one more wind sprint. Where Ohio State, they're trying to do those things, but it's so much easier when you're climbing the mountain than when you're on top of the mountain. Right? It's so much more difficult to maintain. And that's what's been so impressive about Alabama and Georgia. But even now, you're starting to see a little decline because there's those other teams that are coming up. Ohio State has had a whole off season of people patting them on the back and telling them how great they are and how good they're going to be. And we haven't even played a game yet.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, this is not even going to be it'll be a resemblance of the same team, but they wear the same number. They have the culture and the history and the tradition that those other guys have left. But that stuff goes out the window when you get out there and you say hike, because now you got to play good. You got to play ball.
Well, that game also is going to include. We mentioned Arch Manning, who will be, I'm sure, one of the top Heisman guys that in that Heisman hype, and then Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State, who probably is the leader of the pack right now when it comes to the Heisman. Obviously, last year as a true freshman was unbelievable. Everyone thought that if he could have went to the NFL draft, he may have been the number 1 overall pick, if not definitely the number 1 receiver.
He's one of those athletes that we consider freaks.
Yeah.
Right. We put him in a cage. You don't need to touch him. He is a freak of nature. He was born to be a first-round player.
Mhm.
You know, people think that you can work yourself into being. No, there's specimens and there's people on this planet that are bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic than anybody else. And they're born that way. God has blessed them with that size, that speed, that athleticism, and you know they're born first round players, and that's him. That's him to a T.
And they say that he's put on some muscle this offseason and has not lost any speed. Matter of fact, they said he's gained speed.
They say he's put 25 pounds.
I think it's like 20. Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see him. And God Almighty, if he's gotten 20 more pounds of muscle and got faster, who's going to stop that dude?
I don't know if you remember a guy named Boston. His last name was Boston.
Yeah, David Boston.
David Boston. All right. He was a Ohio State guy as well.
I think he wore number 9.
And if you remember, the same thing happened to him, right? His freshman year, sophomore, he had an incredible season. And for some reason, somebody got in his ear and told him he needed to gain 25, 30 pounds. And the next year, he came in like an inflated blow doll and was like 250, but he couldn't move. Right. And he was stiff and he couldn't get out of his brakes. So whoever gave him that advice, I hope it's not the same person giving this kid that advice. And I know that things are done a lot differently now.
I was going to say now they got him like Drago and Rocky 3 or 4. I'm sure they have him hooked up to every computer and all this stuff, monitoring everything about him.
I will give you that because things have changed significantly with the amount of technology and all the other things that these guys have at their disposal to go out there and play.
Well, let's stay with another team in the Big Ten that has a lot of preseason.
So the AP has come out with these polls.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Ohio State should be the number 1 team? I know they're the champs. Here's my concern with Ohio State. They don't have the same guy running the ship. Right, I mean,
they haven't even announced who their quarterback is yet. They
didn't even have a starting quarterback yet.
Yeah,
we're 2 weeks away from the beginning of the season, and I will tell you this. And I've played a lot of football. I've seen a lot of games. I've coached on offense. I've played in huddles with 2 quarterback systems. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none.
Yeah, that's old Steve Spurrier quote.
And you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And I've done it with Mark Brunell and Billy Joe Hobart, 2 guys that were super good that both played in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State is going to have similar guys that are going to be really good players. But if you don't have the guy that everybody looks to and says, he's our leader and we're going to trust him, you're going to have picking teams. You're going to have picking sides with those other quarterbacks. So they better find out who their starting quarterback is real soon. Well, because I don't feel like if they don't, you're going to see, just kind of a stagnant offense initially. And you better not do that against Texas because, like we just talked about, Manny's going to be able to score some points.
Yeah, and I will say this. The guys that are battling for that quarterback job are, cream of the crop guys. So I got to believe whoever wins the job is going to be good.
Mark Billy Joe Hobart.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
first
and they're going to have weapons everywhere. As you know, Ohio State just puts in every person they start at receiver ends up being an NFL first-round pick, it seems. Running backs, I mean, both their running backs this year went in, I think, the second, third round, and we see what Trayvon Henderson's already doing for the Patriots. I mean, no one can touch the dude. So they've got weapons everywhere. So I'm sure they'll be fine, but you're right. I mean, whoever the quarterback is, it's going to be his first ever start at Ohio State in front of 100,000 people against Texas on national TV and ESPN.
With all the hype and pressure of being the number 1 ranked team in the country. And if you don't do your job, you're going to be the reason why. As we know, quarterbacks get all the success, and rightfully so. They deserve a lot of it, but they also get all the crap when it rolls downhill on a loss.
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be a great game. And again, once we get ahead of that game, the week before that game, we'll make our picks.
Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country?
Well, I mean, Texas is number 1 in the AP poll, so I would lean Texas. But even then, like Arch Manning hadn't played much. I mean, yours was their quarterback last year. So when he got in there, he looked good, but it didn't like he's played a lot. So like this is going to be his first big road start. So again, he has the pedigree and all that. And I'm sure he's going to come out just fine. But I think that game, when we do break it down the week before the game, we're going to start off with that quarterback position because it is going to be both quarterbacks, regardless of who's Ohio State's quarterback. It's going to be their first big time start. And it's the first game of the year, and how they handle it will be really interesting.
And I think that's what you're saying is obviously going to be the thing that a lot of people are looking at in the storyline heading into the games, versus a guy like Carson Beck or Clay Klubnik that's over at Clemson that have some experience and we kind of know what we're getting, with those guys, which can be good, could be bad, because, I've seen a lot of players, a lot of teams feeling like they had that guy at quarterback, and he really just wasn't that guy. DJ Ugalunga, right, from Clemson a couple years ago, they thought he was that guy, but he was a guy that was probably at his peak and was never going to get any better. And you really were just kind of coming back with the same old garbage, right? So, but I do believe that with Manning, he's been groomed to do this.
Yeah, no question.
And not everybody's going to be able to do it like their dad, right? And there's a lot of pressure on these kids to follow in footsteps, but he's had the right coaching, he's had the right tools, he's always had that pressure on him.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be anything new to him. It's just going to be at a bigger stage, at a bigger level against a better team.
Yeah, I can't wait for that game. Penn State, real quick, because that's the other team that a lot of people want to talk to in the Big Ten. I always have a hard time believing in Penn State. Now, last year, they had a really good team. They had a really good defense. Obviously, their tight end, Warren, first-round pick with the Colts. And then their quarterback, Drew Aller.
They also had a defense. Their defensive line was
Abdul Carter. They were their safeties, their corner. I mean, they put guys all over the NFL in last year's draft. But Drew Aller, their quarterback, could have come out. A lot of people thought he'd be a first-round pick. Some people had him projected maybe in the third round. A lot of people compare him to Josh Allen. Big guy, can run, rocket arm, struggles with accuracy sometimes in decision making, but they start off with 4 cupcake games, and by the time that they hit a real team, it's going to be week 4, and they're at home against Oregon, who's also got a lot to prove.
I'm not a big believer in him as a quarterback as of yet.
Yep,
I saw him play Ohio State, loss. I saw them play Oregon. He made terrible decisions and had 3 turnovers early in that game against Oregon, which ended up costing them the ball game. He's decision making is a part of that growing process, obviously, for a quarterback, knowing where your players are going to be versus knowing what the defense is doing and when to throw the ball, where to throw the ball, etc. And those things can slow down for a guy as he gets more reps. That's really what he's going to have to do, because he has the tools, he has the talent, as you point out, and he has the size.
And he did what a lot of guys don't do, which I think we are going to start seeing in the NIL era, is that he decided to stay at school. He could have been a draft pick and made a bunch of money right out of the gate. He's going to make more money, I'm sure, at Penn State this year than he would have if he was a third-round draft choice. But he did stay, so he had another off season to get better, another off season in that program. So I think I commend him for doing that and staying. So we'll be interested to see how they do that. Like I said, they start off with a few cupcakes before they get to Oregon in week 4.
And those are going to be all big business decisions for a lot of these quarterbacks moving forward, DJ, what you just said, especially with the NIL and the amount of money that they're paying these guys. What's Manning's making what, $7 million?
I think 6, 7 million.
$7 million. They're paying the guy from Ohio State.
The quarterback, Bryce Underwood, the quarterback from Michigan, who was the #1 recruit in the country, committed to LSU, and then Dave Portnoy from Barstool and some other gazillionaires from Michigan put their money together, and I think gave him $10 million, if I'm not mistaken. And he said, "All right, LSU, see ya. I'm heading to Michigan." And so he'll be starting there too. And again, that's a whole nother story. But Well, the point that I was going to make with that is that because these guys are starting to make that money, and there's really no rules in place, so it is the wild, wild west. And until that changes, you're going to see guys staying in school if they're not projected to be top 10, 12, 15, in the draft, or at least a first rounder, because the difference in the NFL between a first round quarterback, the money that they make over time, versus a third round quarterback or second round quarterback, and the money they make over time is significant. Well, and you can look at 2 quarterbacks right away, Shedeur Sanders and Ewers, who got drafted by, I think, the 6th round by the Dolphins. Both of those guys could have made $6 million plus if they would have stayed. And Ewers would have, I think Michigan State offered him $6 million because he knew Arch Manning was going to be taking his spot. And then Shedeur, obviously, if he stayed at Colorado, would have made more than that. So you're right. I think both of those guys now are making like $500,000, something ridiculously low.
Ridiculously low for them.
Well, for what they would have made,
that's right.
or probably what they made the year before.
That's right.
They made more the last year of their college career. So you're right. That's going to play.
They're taking pay cuts.
Absolutely. Yeah. And but they're in the NFL, and we'll see. Shedeur obviously had a first good start against the Panthers.
He's hurt already.
I saw he pulled his oblique. I think they said they're just being careful with him, and they're not. They saw what he can do. I think they've got 18 quarterbacks on their roster. They need to whittle down, and I think they're going to try to get some of those other guys sometime. Let's jump over to the ACC real quick, because we're talking about quarterbacks. Clemson is everyone's preseason pick to be the champion. ACC for the last 14 years has gone to either Clemson or a team that has beat them in the regular season. So it's Dabo's conference until somebody takes it from him. And so far, not many teams have been able to do that. They returned Cade Klubnik, who his freshman year struggled. We were kind of both like, is this guy really supposed to be the number one quarterback? Last year, he had a great year, 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns. He returns 3 of his 4 top receivers. So, they're both of their offensive and defensive lines are going to be stout this year. Clemson always plays good defense, it seems. But they lose their starting running back, but they've got 2 young guys in there that are faster. And
they're a team that reloads for sure.
Yeah, they reload.
They're a reloading, not a rebuilding program. They're going to have first rounders. They're going to have guys going to the NFL left and right. The problem I have with Clemson in the big picture, right, is they're going to win the ACC, most likely. Miami could challenge. Don't sleep on Florida State. And there might be 1 or 2 other sleepers that come in there, maybe a Louisville or somebody like that with an upset, right?
Yep.
Maybe here. So, North Carolina could be a team that I want to talk about that we're not, mentioning that could upset somebody because of where they're at and what they have going for them. But Clemson, my biggest problem with them in the big picture is they play in the ACC, right? It would be the same thing with Oregon. If Oregon was being touted as the national champion favorite, is they play in the Big Ten now, which is a little bit different. When they used to play in the Pac-12,
right?
They are not going to see or have faced the dogs and the beasts that live in the SEC, right? There's a different animal that lives in that country versus the different animal that lives up in the Northwest or on the East Coast.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, they're built different. They're grown men. And if you're playing against little boys over on the coasts, when you get to the grown man country, it's a completely different feel. And that's where the games are won or lost in those big moments, right? So it's not that Clemson's not going to have the talent. They're going to have the 5-star guys. But they haven't built through the fire of what, these SEC teams in these seasons where they see these guys week to week to week. Well, so that's my biggest question mark with Clemson is that all the skill guys in the world, right? We saw it when they beat Bama a couple of years ago when, Tua was there, and then they had, the Hurts come out, and they had receivers everywhere, and they had players and playmakers. That's great, right? But can you win, in between in the trenches?
We're going to find out right out of the gate because August 30th, Clemson is the Battle of the Death Valleys. They open at home August 30th against LSU. So they're going to get some SEC right away in Clemson in the real Death Valley. As far if you're from the South or if you're from North Carolina, that's the real Death Valley. I've been to both, and both of them are incredible. But
one smells like corn dogs. The other one,
the other one smells like Bacardi and grain alcohol, and that's the one in LSU. If you're not sure which one I'm talking about, but they start with LSU, and that should be a great matchup. Again, 2 great quarterbacks. Both of those quarterbacks could be first, second round picks for sure. Brian Kelly has a little heat on him now in LSU. He's been there for I think 4 years now, if I'm not mistaken, coming from Notre Dame, and has had some early success, but struggled pretty much. Well, last year definitely struggled. Year before that wasn't great, and so he's got something to prove. He's already talking smack about the real Death Valley and all this stuff, like he does. Dabo hadn't really bought into much of it, which I like, prove it on the field. But they'll get some SEC blood right away, and we'll learn a lot.
Does Dabo have the swag or the inner guts that you think that he needs to some of these other coaches have? Because he's one of those coaches that is, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. All right? It's a Christian values. It's good kids. It's family. But is he going to be able to take his team into a hostile environment?
I mean, I think he's done it again and again and again over his career at Clemson. And I will say this about Dabo, don't let the Christian family values, which I'm all for, by the way, but don't let that surprise you. I mean, he'll get up your butt. Right. I mean, I've seen him get in players' faces and referees'
That's
faces.
So unchristian-like of him.
Well, guess what? He just doesn't say the bad words, and I'm sure he does that too. But no, I think Dabo's proved that again and again. in. But I think that this will be a big test for them on that first game against LSU. If you come out of the game or come out of the gate and pop them, then I think everyone, because there's a lot of people, Reese Davis from ESPN, he has Clemson as #1 team in the preseason.
Well, isn't Clemson, didn't Dabo say a couple years ago when this whole NIL deal started that he was not going to buy into this buying players?
The portal coming all over.
He's not going to buy into that. And I think for the most part, he's held true to his word.
He has. Yeah, he has not dove in like all these other teams.
He's not going out there recruiting these guys and paying them over exorbitant amounts of money. I'm sure he still has to pay, or buy into the NIL to some degree, but he's not doing the transfer kids in and knocking other
like
kids
these
out.
other guys are.
He's recruiting his kids and he's growing them and he's building them. And it'll be interesting to see, because this will be like year 3 or year 4 this is going on, if that kind of theory or philosophy works in big time college football, because he's going to be playing a team that just goes out there and they're mercenaries looking for the best players and paying them the most money.
Yep. And you mentioned Miami real quick. They opened with Notre Dame. Notre Dame is stacked again, arguably the best running back in the
That's gonna be a great game.
Should be. Miami can score. They brought in Carson Beck from Georgia, who I've never been a huge fan of his, but he's at least a solid quarterback. Their defense was awful last year, and we'll see if they've improved it. Notre Dame should be good on both sides, but they've got to question the quarterback. They're going to have a first-time starting quarterback as well. And if CJ Carr can play, then they should be in good shape. If not, then they could be in trouble. But the one team that and you mentioned Florida State earlier. They hit the portal like crazy. They took BC's quarterback, so you would think they'd be in better shape.
Year 3 in a row for them, by the way. 2 years ago, they got kind of shaded away from.
Well, they got screwed out of the playoffs.
Screwed out of the playoff. And last year was a disaster. They went out and got they bought a whole new team, brought them in, and there was no continuity. But this is kind of now year 2 with those guys. What'll be interesting to see is how they have evolved as a team and what type of job their coach has done.
Well, there's a lot of coaches that are going to be on the hot seat, and he's going to be one. I mean, he went from getting screwed out of the national championship to not even, just being awful last year.
Biggest disappointment in college football.
Yeah, so this is a big year for him. But the one team that everyone, at least down here, is excited about is the Carolina Tar Heels. Our buddy Alex Hunter just walked in, and him and his wife are, Mr. and Miss Tar Heel. Most of our friends are Tar Heel fans. You and I are the only two, I guess, smart enough to stick with the Duke team.
I love ragging those guys when it comes to basketball. I really do. But when it comes to
I's got a haircut, by the way. I don't think I've seen his hair that short in a while, man.
I love ragging those guys when it comes to basketball, especially when Duke is doing well.
Yep.
And they would turn around and do the same. That's what makes that rivalry so great, right? It's what's made it so great over the last 100 years. But in football, I like the Tar Heels. I root for them. Partly being as I've coached a lot of those kids that are going to that school, so it's hard for me to root against kids that I've helped grow up to be, a quality guy and a good football player. And I kind of like their program. The one thing I wish with the Tar Heels is that they had a little bit more dog mentality when it came to practice and the things that it takes to win.
Don't you think Belichick's probably brought that with him? I mean, they say that they
have more technology at that university. For example, they have a helmet that can measure the impact. All right, and if it ranges too high,
I think a lot of universities are using that now. I think Wake Forest started. Yeah,
they're not using that in the SEC. They're not using that in the
SEC. They don't want a reason for these dudes to have to come out of practice.
That's right. They're going out there and they're it's competition, right? So the problem is with that North Carolina is that you want to be competitive at like the SEC. You want to be competitive like Clemson. You want to get to these, but you're practicing like Mary Poppins.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. A lot of the people that I've read or
I've been to their practices.
Well, no, I know, but with Belichick though, I think that's different.
I've not been to a Belichick practice.
Yeah, I think it's different. I think that from what I've heard and when I've heard some of his ex-players who have been there,
it depends on if his girlfriend's running practice or not.
Well, that's different. But that would motivate the hell out of me if she's out there. If I'm chasing her in a 40-yard dash.
Wrong type of motivation. These guys are supposed to be focused on the play, not playing.
Put a football in her hand and have her run it out. I'll follow her ass out there. But the thing that everyone has said that he's really has implemented, they say it's so similar to Patriot practices, and even the film they're watching. I watched an interview with Belichick last night where he said that when the players do something wrong, they're showing them film of how Gronkowski did it and how Brady did it, and how Edelman did it, how Lawrence Taylor did it, how Ty Law did it. And so I think he really has implemented
teaching.
Well, but even then, I think that their practices, they've said, have been very competitive. Now, listen, their defense has been atrocious for years.
Mm-hmm.
They score points. That has not been a problem at Carolina. Now, this year, we'll see who their quarterback's going to be. Gio Lopez transferred in and probably be the starter. Max Johnson, who's Brad Johnson's son, great pedigree, but he's the one that broke his leg in the first game last year. There's a great article on ESPN if you haven't read it about how bad that was. They had to literally. He was in the hospital at night. The doctor couldn't get there in the morning. They literally had to drill a hole through his bone and put a rope in it and hang a 5-pound weight off the bed to keep the bone in place before they could do surgery. He's fighting for the starting job, but everyone seems to think that Gio Lopez will be the guy. But their defense has been so bad. Well, that's Belichick's calling card, right? Defense. Last year, in 5 of their 7 losses, they allowed over 34 points. So if Belichick is going to be the guy that Carolina fans hope they are, and I do think he's going to be successful. He has brought, I think, 47 new players in between transfer portals and freshmen and all this, great recruits. If he can fix that defense, then they're going to at least be in a lot of these games. Their schedule's pretty easy too, so they got that going for him, but he's going to have to fix the defense before they do anything.
I know this as a coach, as a player, as a guy that studies and watches the game for my entire life. There's only one way to teach blocking. That's to block.
Yep.
There's only one way to teach you how to be faster. That's to run fast. There's only one way to teach tackling. That's to go out and tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you're not practicing, you can't. It's not about hitting pads and circles or donuts is what they call them as they roll and tackle those things. Those teach you the technique. But if you're not tackling live, if you're not hitting another man,
mm-hmm.
if you're not bringing him down and using your force and running your feet and hitting and doing the things necessary to win, which is going to take a little grit and determination and some toughness, right? If you're not doing those things in practice, and the problem with the NFL and their practices is they don't do those things.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to have done those things in high school, in college. Those things should be inbred in you so that when you get to the pros, it's second nature. For these kids, it's not second nature. Not yet. So unless they're doing those things in practice where they're physically going out there and having physical practices, which is going to mean that there's going to be some guys that are getting banged up. And that's a part of the mentality of that. Yeah, this hurts, but I'm not injured.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to push through those things. If you're not developing the crusts and the calluses, right, when they go out there and they play the games, their hands are going to bleed, right? And that's the problem that's been North Carolina over the years, is that they haven't put the calluses on their hands. So when they go play the game, they start bleeding and they can't tackle.
Well,
they just can't. They're maybe one of the worst tackling teams in the ACC because of it.
And they've had great talent on defense too. You're right. They just haven't done the job in a game. So we'll see. I got to think Belichick's probably had these boys. I got to believe Belichick's had these guys
look like
hitting.
Tarzan.
I know, play like Jane. But you got to think that Belichick's got these boys hitting pretty well in there. I don't think he's the kind of coach that's going to sit them in there and let them lollygag around. That doesn't.
I'm not saying
that's never been
around, but I'm saying that there's a different mentality from college to pro, and all those guys that you're talking about in pro, they had put the work in. It's about the grassroots, the fundamentals, going back.
But
to
let me ask you this then. So out of, and I think I know the answer after what you just said, but you played at Washington
mm-hmm.
College. You won a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
You've played for the Panthers. The first year they were, an organization
mm-hmm.
with a defensive-minded coach and Dom Capers. You played in St. Louis on the greatest show on turf
with an offensive-minded
coach with one of the best offenses we've seen, and then with Arizona towards the end. Out of all those
teams,
teams,
McGinnis is a defensive guy.
So out of those 4 teams that you've played with, who had the toughest practices? And I know there were certain rules that got implemented.
St. Louis by far, the one that went to the Super Bowl, the team that we went to the Super Bowl.
Was it toughest because you were hard hitting every day? Because I know what you're going to say. It was toughest also because the best players led by example.
It was the way that we practiced. It was by far, when I say by far, and I'm talking national championship Washington Huskies. When we first came here with the Panthers, everybody was competing a little bit then, but it was more like that was a training camp where we had 3-a-days, and that was just the heat and the brutality of it. But the speed of practice wasn't the speed of practice in which people played at. When I went to the Rams was significantly greater than everywhere else, right? Because the best players on the team practiced the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't out working Marshall Faulk on Monday through Thursday. You weren't out working Torrey Holt or Isaac Bruce or Orlando Pace or London Fletcher. You had great players out there pushing me as an average player to be better. If I didn't, I got embarrassed. If I got embarrassed, I lost my job in practice. You could lose your job in practice by being embarrassed. Right. So I knew in practice when I got in that huddle and I looked across the line, those guys are going to bring it. Right. And, we have tempos, but I know that I have to be at my best in practice. So when I play the game, it was easy because I'm not practicing against those guys. Those guys that I'm playing against, they're better than anybody I'm going to play against on Sunday. And they made me better on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's the difference between the level of competition and how that raises the bar for me as a player that I have to be better or else I lose my job. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I think Belichick will bring that. We'll see. Well, his son, Alex just said, I think he's got a son and another son. He's got a couple of his boys on that team, but his son last year, we'll give his son credit. Last year was the defensive coordinator at Washington, who had an awful defense. Even the year they made it to the championship, they weren't awful, but they weren't. They weren't good. They weren't SEC defense. They weren't bigger. They weren't faster. Right. They weren't. But last year, I think he ranked in the top 30 in defense. And again, they weren't playing the tough guys that they were. I'll tell you this as a coach: I can put a player in the best position possible. Where he's supposed to make that play, and guess what? The guy across from him makes a miss. And then he goes for 60. Right. What do I do as a D? I might be the best damn D coordinator in the country. I can't tackle for the kids. I can't tackle. I can put them in position to win. And most coaches do that, by the way. It's do they have the dogs and the guys, the men that are going to go out there and win one-on-one. Right. And that's what it comes down to. And I think that's the problem had been at Carolina is that they just don't have enough of those guys because I'm going to find your weakness as a coach. You might have a strong guy here, you might have a strong guy there, but there's your weakness. And I'm going to exploit that every way I can in multiple different sets and multiple different formations. And I'm going to find my best guy to go against your worst guy and wear you out over time. Well, we'll see. You're talking about technology. I did hear that Carolina is implementing new technology this year. When you walk into the game, they have this robot that inserts the penny in your penny loafers. And cracks your wine open, which I thought was pretty cool. Alabama, Florida State. I want to talk about Alabama real quick, too, because they're kind of the team that obviously have been one of the top teams in college football forever. Saban retires. They get a new coach. Last year, they had what they would call a disappointing year, so there's some heat on him. He's brought in a bunch of new talent. Obviously, Ty Simpson, they just named quarterback who's been there, I think, for 4 years now. This will be his first starting role. They've got talent behind him if he does struggle in a couple younger guys. But they open at Florida State, and we were just talking about what a big year this is for Florida State. That should be a good game as well. Well, maybe. Obviously, before he was at Alabama, he was at Washington. And before he was at Washington, he had won everywhere he's been. Everywhere. And the one thing that he's won was with a quarterback that understood his system. He handpicked Penix Jr. to be his guy. And because of that, he didn't win his junior year, but his senior year, they did well his junior year, but his senior year, they went to the national championship, right? And they ended up losing, obviously, in that game. But the point is that he knew a guy that was going to run his system. He knew a guy he could trust. And he went out there and surrounded him with players that was going to fit his skill set. It's going to take him a while at Alabama, to find that guy that fits his system. Right. Or that he's looking for to run his system. And, a lot of great coaches, you'll ask this, that's the age old question. As a coach, do I coach to my players and what their strengths are? The answer is yes, always. But do I find a player that matches my system? And that's what you look for. Right. And then you have to play to his strengths and his weaknesses once you find him. That's what this guy does really well. Right. And now he's going to have year 2 with a guy that he can maybe have that arm around and watch that film and have learned. No different than a quarterback coming off the bench that has some talent in the pros, and now he's ready to go out there and play because he's watched. Just like what we saw with Bryce Young, right? He learned and grew from watching. on the bench. He got thrown in. Things were happening fast. Defenses were changing. He wasn't ready for that, right?
Yeah.
At Alabama, when you're throwing to guys that are 5 yards wide open and nobody's around you, it's one thing because you got the best athletes and the best frisbee catching dogs on the planet. But now you go to the pros, and those 5 yards, you're in the hip pocket, and it doesn't look open to the quarterback. He's going to hold it. He's not going to throw it. So he had to learn that guy's open.
Yeah.
Right? That even though he's on in his hip, he's still open.
Mm-hmm.
You have to throw it to a spot where he can get to, and you have to be accurate. That's one thing that Bryce is really good at, is his accuracy and why he's able to succeed. So same thing with any quarterback that has a coach that understands the game and looking for that guy. I don't know if this is that guy for him or not, but
because what's interesting,
he's going to at least have his ear for an extra year.
Yeah, exactly. He was there to sit there and watch last year, but last year he had Milroe at quarterback, which is one of the most athletic quarterbacks we've ever seen. Now he's not one of the most
different type of styles.
Well, I was gonna say he's not the most accurate quarterback we've ever seen. Rocket arm, but didn't know where it was going a lot of the time. So it'll be interesting to see, because Penix could run, but he didn't have to run that often. He preferred to throw the ball, and I think that's what this guy would prefer to do.
Penix threw the ball and ran when he had to.
Right.
Milroe had to run to be successful.
Right.
Two different styles of quarterback.
Yep.
Right. When Milroe wasn't running and they weren't utilizing him in a Cam Newton quarterback, running back type of offense, he wasn't very effective. Cam Newton wasn't very effective when he stood in the pocket and decided he wanted to be a pocket passer. We're like, run, and he would stand there and just take the sack because he's not reading the defenses, or it was happening too late, too slow. That there's a big difference in those two styles, and I don't think that with Milroe that was the style that DeBoer was looking. That's what he was dealt,
right?
And he had to try to use him to the best of his ability. But maybe now, he still has all the other pieces in place. Maybe now he has that guy that is going to be able to diagnose the defense, throw the ball on time, and when something's not there, take off and run.
Well, we'll find out against Florida State in that first game. That'll be a fun one. Before we switch to the Panthers, I want to talk about one more college game that, again,
there's so many great ones.
There's so many great ones. But I want to talk about this one, which may not be a great one, but it's going to be important to a lot of people in the Charlotte area, and that's UNC Charlotte against App State at Bank of America Stadium. And
I'm sorry, I threw up a little bit all over.
I mean, listen, here's the deal. Both teams have brand new coaches, right? Tim Albin comes to UNC Charlotte from Toledo, where he was incredibly successful, beating teams who had a lot more NIL money, a lot more scholarships.
They said that about every team at Charlotte. Every coach. The last coach that they had at Charlotte.
The last coach they had in Charlotte was a gazillionaire from hedge funds and was a great high school coach in Maryland. Had never coached college besides being an assistant coach at Maryland for Harbaugh, but had never been a head coach in college. Tim Albin comes from Toledo. UNC Charlotte has 3 returning starters, which a lot of people would say, man, well, I say that's a good thing because your team was horrible last year, right? So he brings in, I believe, 43 new guys. He brings in a quarterback from Duke, a quarterback from Carolina that are battling for the starting jobs. He brings in 2 of his linebackers from Ohio.
He's bringing in their trash.
Well, you can say that, but sometimes a guy also just needs an opportunity. Joe Burrow wasn't trash when he left Ohio State to go to LSU, and we can name a lot of quarterbacks that have success when they go.
We're talking about LSU and Ohio State.
Well, no question. Yeah, I'm not comparing UNC Charlotte to either one of them for sure. But they returned 3 starters, but he did bring 2 of his linebackers in from Ohio. They got receivers from LSU, from Boston College that they're bringing in. Two good guys, good running. They always have good running backs at Charlotte. I'll give them that. And then App State, kind of very similar. First losing season, I think, last year in a long time. They bring in Dow Logains from South Carolina, their offensive coordinator. He is a first-time college coach, so it'll be interesting to see. Head coach, correct. And they've got 2 transfers as well, one from Vandy, AJ Swan, and then one from Iowa State, JJ Cole, who's a redshirt freshman, who are battling for the job. So they only returned 3 starters on defense, and their defense was atrocious last year. So you got an offensive coach taking over App State with a bad defense with 3 returning starters. You've got a coach at Charlotte returning 3 starters. So who knows what the heck this game is gonna be? But I'll tell you, I know they've sold out the Lower Bowl so far, and I think they'll probably sell decent seats upstairs. Both fan bases are it's already a rivalry. There's been more for 2 teams, and App State's had a good football program. So let me just make sure I say that first.
It's a rivalry?
App State has had a very good football program for a long time. UNC Charlotte has done nothing, right? They made one bowl game.
Well, who is it a rivalry for?
Well, it's a rivalry for the fans just because, you didn't go to high school, but if you go to high school anywhere around Charlotte.
Well, I coached high school here for 25
Well, then
years.
Then a lot of the kids go to App State, a lot of kids go to Charlotte, right? There's a rivalry just from that standpoint, not from the schools battling each other. They haven't played yet.
Just the fans.
But the fans are talking a lot of crap and
the bravado.
And the bravado and UNC Charlotte fans have no reason to talk because they've been awful. App State has had a great football program for a long time. They just had a bad year last year. So I think the fans are going to be jacked up. I think the atmosphere in there is going to be great. And again, who knows what happens in the game? There's going to be a lot of new players playing for both teams that we can't even really break down now because we don't even know what to expect from App State's offense. Their head coach comes from South Carolina last year, where they have arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country, right? So, so it's hard to see, to think he's going to take that offense and just slap it right in App State. But it's going to be a fun game. I'm excited about it. I don't know who the heck's going to win. I don't know if it's going to be low scoring or high scoring. Nobody knows. But
are you excited about it because you went to Charlotte, or are you excited about it as a casual fan? Because I'm a casual fan sitting here. And I didn't go to either school, and I have a lot of kids that are at those schools now as students and things like that. They're not excited about it. They're not excited about it. I mean, I'm not trying to crap on their party or that parade. I know that alumni, that you want Charlotte to be good, but but
I'm not in that. I mean, of course I want to be good, but I'm not in that group of alumni that goes to every alumni event, does everything here, thinks we're going to be good this year. I mean, I've got friends that I go back to my dad's buddies at UNC Charlotte that every year when I talk to them, like, oh, we're going to be great this year. We got this transfer from so-and-so, and he's 7 foot tall, and he's going to do.
Kind of sounds like you with the Panthers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where I learned it from. And so, I don't buy into all that crap. I just don't. So I'm not one of those alumni. What I am buying into, though, is this. I think it's great for Charlotte, and I think it's great for a school who wants to build something from a football standpoint. And by the way, that is a uphill battle. You're at UNC Charlotte. You don't have you don't have close to the money that the schools you're competing against have. App State,
and that's what's so crazy.
Not far off of that either. But for this day at least, because look, UNC Charlotte's gonna get their butts whooped in conference. They got a tough conference. I mean, you had Army and Navy both last year who were great. You got Memphis, you got Tulane, who's probably going to win the conference this year. They've got a nice conference, and they're going to have they've got a tough schedule. This is just a game that if you win this game, you feel good about yourself for a week, and you move on. And there's a lot of trash talking online. There's a lot of trash talking from friends of mine that went to App State that I see at the bars.
What makes you think that Charlotte has any chance to hang with App State? Because if we're talking about tradition and history and things like, Charlotte doesn't really have much. So, I'll give them a little grace there. But App State is, as far as a smaller school, and they've had
a great football
call them the tallest midget conference, right? They have had all the tradition, all the history,
no doubt,
all the players,
no doubt,
all the championships.
And I'm not saying that Charlotte has a chance. I'm just saying that the reason I don't know if they do or if they don't is because both of these teams have new head coaches. They both had bad years last year, and they're both replacing a ton of players. And so we don't know what those guys are going to do. I mean, we have no clue. I
would ask any kid this question, and I don't know the answer to this, right? If these were your only two options, right, and you're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, there's a lot of good football here. I coach high school football here. I have for a long time. There's a lot of talent that comes out of this state, out of this city, and out of the teams that we play. A lot of guys go to the NFL.
Yep.
It's probably top 10 in the country as far as the population, the amount of kids that come out of here to go on and have success. Rock Hill, South Carolina, I even throw them in there. You put those two together, this area in general has some really talented players. You know where those kids go? Those kids go to Tennessee, they go to Georgia, they go to Alabama.
The four stars.
The 3 and 4 stars.
Yeah.
Where do the other kids go, right? If you're one of those other kids and you're a 2-star kid, a 1-star kid, Wake Forest, they're interested, but they're, you're not really Wake Forest material. You don't have the grade, whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
And your only two options were Charlotte and App State. Where would you go?
Man, it would be tough. And I'll tell you, here's the criteria that I would have to look at if one of my boys were making the decision or if I was making it myself. And if you're a 1 or 2-star, NIL money is not going to come into the equation, right? Because you're not going to get any money either way. If you did, it'd be negligible. I would probably look at the same things I looked at when I went to college to play soccer, but I would probably look and see where I had a best chance to play quicker. So if I thought I had a chance to start first year, that would definitely give a check mark to whichever school I thought that would happen. I would say that I think UNC Charlotte's schedule and the teams that they play would definitely be a plus for me because they're playing teams that are in the top 20. I mentioned Army, Navy, Memphis, Tulane. So they're playing bigger schools, and there's going to be more exposure because of that. But when you come to facilities, let's say Charlotte's done a great job with the facility, but App State has a tremendous facility. It would be a tough call. I think honestly it would probably come down to where I could play the quickest.
And I'm looking at a different perspective because we both have been in that position. Which program values their football players more? And it's not even close. App State is a football school.
Correct.
When you go to App State on a visit, you're going to be rolled out the red carpet. We want you here. Every, pretty girl on campus is going to be a part of that process that they can go out there and find a way to get involved, to write you letters, to make you feel like if I go to this school, this is all that's going to be here is these pretty girls. They're not showing you the ones with no teeth and they come from Tennessee on their mom's moonshine farm, right? Same thing with Charlotte. But what school is going to make that better, make that more enjoyable? And it's not even close. Charlotte doesn't know who they are as a program, as an organization.
But okay,
they don't.
I would say this: they're starting over again, right? So that's never a good sign when you have to start over again. Right. But they are starting over again. UNC Charlotte's a great school. They have a beautiful campus, one of the prettiest in the state. And then they've got in App State, you got. And I'm not saying this in a negative. I'm talking about if I'm picking myself.
Kids aren't looking at all that stuff.
They are looking at what am I going to do at nighttime? Am I going to go climb a mountain and listen to a dude play a banjo and go hang out in the dorm in the snow? Or am I going to go down to Charlotte and hit South End and go to Noda or go to Solo, whatever the hell they call these places, and the 100 bars in South End and all the places that I can go and meet hot girls and do these and do this. The big fraternity houses and again, App State. I'm not saying I don't mean this name. My sisters went to App State. I love App State. I was recruited to play soccer there. But the Charlotte offers a lot. Now, from a winning tradition in football, you're 100% right. They have not had that. They haven't. App State 100% wins that category. So you're right. I mean, that would definitely be in my decision. But as far as to say that Charlotte doesn't offer anything to go play football there is just incorrect. Charlotte offers a lot. Like I said, education, beautiful campus.
Kids don't care about
Charlotte.
Education.
When you're a 1 or 2 star, you do because you're not going to be in the NFL.
What are you going to go to Charlotte to become? A nurse?
No, Charlotte's got. You can do engineering at Charlotte. You can do architect at Charlotte. Communications. They just started a sports science degree that is phenomenal. That a lot of schools don't have. So Charlotte offers a tremendous amount when it comes to education. Like I said, beautiful facilities, beautiful campus, and then you've got Charlotte. You've got all the things that Charlotte gives you, which you don't get in Boone, North Carolina. The weather, for Christ's sake.
An airport.
But again, and I'm not saying that, like I said, to say anything negatively about App State, because App State's got a beautiful campus, unbelievable facilities. Like I said, my sisters went there. My best buddies in high school went there. I used to spend a lot of time up there. I'd drive up there for a night, whatever. I love App State, but Charlotte offers a lot. So I'm going to ask it really would come down to where I would play.
I'm going to ask that question as a straw poll to some of the kids.
Yeah, without any context. If you just choose.
I'm just going to draw on a piece of paper. I'm taking a little straw poll to my kids because Catholic is the type of program that sends their players to Mario. I mean, I've had 10 kids go to App State. Charlotte didn't have. I've had a couple kids go to Charlotte too. I've had a couple offensive linemen go to Charlotte, right? So I know the level of kid that went to App State versus the level of kid that went to Charlotte, right? Of the kids I coach. But I'm going to ask these kids just straight up. So you have two choices. You have Charlotte, you have App State. Which one you picking?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And I'll tell you another thing too, and I know we only have a few minutes, but the other thing when it comes to App State compared to Charlotte is, and you're talking about recruiting, how, Charlotte does have to recruit against all those schools you mentioned. Tennessee, the SEC.
They get the leftovers of.
They have to fight for them, and they've done an awful job at getting them. That any of the coaches they've had done an awful job of recruiting Charlotte
itself. And this is probably unfair of me to say now, but me coming up when we first came to Charlotte, didn't even want a program. They were doing everything they would to keep football out. right? Until the one donor passed, or however that took place, where they started to come in. They've had to raise money. The school, the main supporters didn't even want football there for so long. The main board members, right? They had to fight and prove that it was going to be a good financial decision to bring them there. And unfortunately, when you look at the stadiums on Saturday, they're not even half full.
Well, I went to 2 games last year. One was against Gardner-Webb, I believe, which they came back and won a crazy game. But actually, they had good crowds both games. I can't remember the other game I was at, but both games they actually had really good crowds. I think last year they actually picked up from a crowd standpoint. Now, again, this year, new coach, again, start over again. But my point, though, about the recruiting thing is that App State, if you're a player in high school, it was like me in soccer. I'll use me as an example.
You'd be the kind of kid.
I led the state in scoring. I played travel. I knew I was a good soccer player, but I knew that I wasn't going to play at Carolina.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to play at SMU.
Virginia Tech, right?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't
Stanford.
that. Yeah, I wasn't a 4-star.
Definitely weren't playing at Stanford.
Well, they offered me an academic scholarship.
Right.
I turned it down. But I knew I wasn't that kind of a player. But when I went on recruiting trips and App State and East Carolina and the schools that I went to, I knew where I was. So when you're a high school football player, you probably have a pretty good idea when you're maybe in 11th grade that you're an App State kind of guy, and App State is at the top of that kind of circle.
From the level of teams that are from the letters that you're getting on the recruiting trail, the ones that are coming in are Gardner-Webb, they're App State, they're East Carolina.
And App State's the king of that crop pretty much. When you're UNC Charlotte and you're battling against all these teams and they're taking the kids out of Charlotte or wherever you're going against, you haven't established who you are. You're going against these big. I know, but what I'm saying is, eventually, right? We hope eventually something will click where we get a coach in here that can build it. Now, look, this guy has done wonders wherever he's been. At Toledo, again, beating teams that had a lot more NIL money and a lot more of this, and he's going to have that same battle here because he's not going to have the money that
he's not going to have any money.
Not much at all.
He's going to have to develop.
He's got to develop.
He's going to have to develop his 3-4 year players, and hopefully they're loyal enough that they don't go to another school their senior year to try to get to the NFL or try to get to.
I'm sure that's going to happen. And this year I think they're over under on wins, if I'm not mistaken, is 2.5, maybe 3. So again, this year, if they win 4 games, it's a success, right? If they win, last year they won 5. If they win 4 or 5 games this year, starting over with a new roster, a new coach, but App State to me is not only easier to recruit because they've established a great football program over the last 20 plus years. And it's the thing there, right? It is the only thing there.
It's the only thing.
They've had something.
That and wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, they had a decent basketball team. Well, at Charlotte, you've got great men's and women's soccer. You've got good baseball.
That's what I said. There's so
basketball has not been good in a long time. That's a whole different ball game.
That's been you're saying, I think, maybe the same thing I was trying to say. Maybe I didn't say it the right way. I feel like I'm talking to my wife here. I didn't know you were married. I'm not married.
You need to tell me
my
something.
My ex-wife.
Did he get married? Oh, Jesus! Again. Don't tell me he did it again.
I was telling you something, and to me, it was sounding great. Like I was saying the exact same. But to you were hearing something completely different. Right?
Well, now I'm not going to understand anything you said because I think you just got married again. I'm shaking.
But we're communicating, but you're not hearing
the words.
What did you hear me say? So I'm saying the same thing. That's been my point about Charlotte, is that there's not that tradition or history instilled in those programs because there's so many other things to do there that not even the faculty or the higher ups wanted football there. Right. So it's a uphill battle. The problem is now that with that uphill battle, if you get a good coach, which you might have, keeping him.
Sure.
Because he's going to be the next NIL guy. Right. The problem you have when you get a good kid is keeping him. Right. Because the next NIL deal is going to say, oh, they got a good player at Charlotte. The Steph Curry just went to Charlotte.
Charlotte is what you now I know what you're saying. Now I hear you. But you're right. Charlotte right now and will be, even if they get successful in the near future, they're a stepping stone.
That's right.
They're going to be a stepping stone for a coach. They're going to be a stepping stone for a player. So if our coach kicks butt the next 3 years, his butt's gone. He'll go to the SEC or the ACC. If a player has a great couple years here, you're right. They're going to lead to a bigger school. So the only way to remain consistent knowing that is to, at some point, you have to build a program where you are consistently getting, like App State has done. And so we'll see. We'll see if they can do it. I hope so. But that game at Bank of America Stadium could be a good start to that. So if you are a Charlotte fan,
do you think they win the game?
I mean, honestly, I don't even know because both teams have so many new players and new coaches that I don't know what to expect. If you ask me right now, I'd have to say App State just because I know
who had more in their cupboard last year.
I would think App State,
right? But
App State's replacing a quarterback, and they had an awful D that only returned 3 starters. So did he bring in, 8 new guys that can play defense? I don't know. UNC Charlotte's replacing darn near everything. Yeah. So we just don't know. It's almost like your game tonight. You've got some players on your team that I'm sure you don't know what you got. They've got some dogs, but you're going to find out a lot tonight. And tomorrow, when you talk about the game, you'll go, man, or the Panthers, for instance. We'll finish with them real quick. We talked about how we know they've got whole linebacker, and we know they probably need some depth in at DB, and we know that their offensive line and on offense they should score points. And just watching highlights of their practice today against the Texans, I saw Leggett with a great touchdown catch in the end zone, and I've seen a couple other great plays. I saw our defensive line stuffing their run again and again. I also saw Nick Scorton, by the way, which scared me, the second round pick who played so good last week. He was a highest rated second round pick in all of preseason last week. They just say get carted off the field, and I'm going, you got to be kidding me. This is Panthers. This is what the Panthers do, but they said it was just heat related. Mm-hmm. Going back, and I wanted to bring this up before we leave, is you were talking about the heat, and I think we talked about last week too, how the heat in Jacksonville is just going to be brutal, and how we've been having rain here, and even Canales said, I want to get these guys to Houston because we need to get in this heat.
Houston and Jacksonville, the humidity there. You can't prepare for the humidity.
Yeah.
Really, it's like, I don't know if you've ever, for people that out there are listening that have been in a wrestling room when there's no humidity and when they don't turn the heat up versus when you turn the heat up and you can't breathe and you have to work with that, it is night and day.
Yep.
In junior high, I remember my wrestling room, we'd go in there and you just stand in there for 20 minutes, you'd be just soaked.
Yep.
Right. Because the heat and the humidity.
Like Cameron Indoor.
It's like we practiced in those conditions on purpose because it prepared you, right? It prepared your lungs, it prepared your breathing, all the things if you don't practice in that environment, when you get into that environment, Washington coming to Miami, right? And you stepped off the plane, you're like,
yeah,
it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
Right. And then you go out and you practice, or you have a walkthrough and you need an IV because your heart rate is now 120 because you're it's like a dog trying to cool down. We're panting.
Yeah.
We're panting out there trying to cool off. Our bodies aren't used to that. You have to be in that environment so that you're slow down your breathing, your body adapts and adjusts and acclimates to that type of weather. The Panthers need that. Even as hot as it is here, it's not that type of heat.
Right. And this week it's been raining so much. So these 2 days in Houston where it's crazy hot. But again, Scorton is going to be all right. It was heat related. The Panthers play Texans this Saturday at 1:00. So Monday, Frank and I will obviously recap that. There's a lot to watch with that too. A lot of these young guys.
That'd be a good test for this offense.
No question.
Texans have a
very good defense.
They have a really that was the strength of their team last year, and they won I think they won a playoff game where they were right into the playoff game last year because of their defense. And for this offensive line, it's gonna be a good test. It's gonna be on the road. It's not gonna be at home. So the communication, part of that is going to be able to, have a little bit more of experience. I think Bryce Young needs a couple series, just like he had, almost similar to what he had.
I think Canal said he's going to play in 4 series. Texans also have a Pro Bowl corner in Stingley Jr., who's great. They've got another good corner on the other side. They have good safety. So it's going to also be a good chance for us to see these 7 receivers that we're talking about, who's going to make the team.
Who's going to rise to the top.
And then whenever Bryce plays against Stroud, they're going to be tied together forever. When Bryce was the first pick and then Stroud, one of the Texans, those guys were buddies, I guess since high school as well. So even though it's a preseason game and they're they're going to, that they're both going to want to play well. Bryce has thrown a couple touchdowns today. I think he has thrown an interception as well. But they play Saturday at 1:00. We'll wrap that up or review that on Monday, as well as talk about some of the cuts that'll be coming up too, because they do a little different now. So they don't break it down every week like they used to when you were playing, where they would cut down to 70 and then whatever.
Yeah, you go from 90 to 70 to 50. What 53?
Now they do it in one lump sum. And we'll also talk about some of the guys they may be looking on the waiver wire when it comes to middle linebacker, and then the kicking battle, which I know you laugh at, but they better figure that out too. We'll see if they have one on the roster they like, or maybe some that they'll look at. So have a great weekend. Go Panthers Saturday, and we'll see you Monday.